Yeah, so I'm going to try my best to stick to facts in respect of this. There's high temptation and a potential to go down a more of an emotive route on things, which I don't really want to do. So I'm going to try and stick as factual as I possibly can, and I'm going to call some things that I consider to be good, and I'm going to call some things that I consider to be not so good. But what I would say is that what I want to talk about here is a bigger picture than just a dog training tool or dog training tools or anything like that, right? Sorry, I've just got to look over.
Right, you've got two running on your page.
Oh,
You've
okay. Can you
deleted
kill
one.
one? Yeah, can you kill one of them? Sorry, that's my fault. Sorry, I've got two lives running at the same time because I'm challenged when it comes to technical things like that. So lovely. We've got some nice viewers on here now, some nice people joining. So I'll kick this off in a sec. Isn't it, Stacey? Isn't it epic? You want one? I've got a few others as well. Thank you. Yeah, so like I say, this is the purpose of this live, just to make sure that you stay with me. It's nothing as straightforward as just a simple training tool, or which I've done lives on before, or a simple aspect of dog training that I've done lives on before, methodology, difference in opinions, that sort of thing. I'm not really into that sort of like battle anymore, to be honest, because it's ongoing. It's been ongoing for years and years, and it will continue on. No doubt for a long time yet to come. But something's come up recently where I think that this is wrong, and this is what I want to call out. This is what I want to talk about. So, say again. Sorry.
That makes it sound like
Oh,
you're
right, sorry.
properly.
No, I just sorry. I'm just shouting over to the side there as well. Okay, so look, I've got enough people here to be able to kick off and go with it for the minute. So, as a lot of people will know, who follow me or who follow dog training in general, social media people, dog trainers who put their work on social media or who discuss dog training on social media, as a lot of people will know, then a lot of what we do is has become sort of like dominated by what the science says. The science, what the science says, the most recent science, etc. And it's almost like you're incapable of actually going about your craft, skillfully working with animals or educating people unless the science backs up what you're saying. Anyway, that sounds like I'm being a little bit patronising, and probably am for the sake of emphasis there. But listen, a most recent piece of work that came out was conducted by Clive Wynne of a university in the States, and it looked at, again, in a different way, electronic training collars versus reward training, and it was looking at stopping dogs from chasing. Well, I'll give you the actual title: a comparison of the efficacy and welfare of different training methods in stopping chasing behaviour in dogs. Okay, so jump back to 2009, 2010 on the Lincoln research in the UK, which was always like hailed as the piece of research. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but the piece of research, and now we've got this piece of research, which has very, very recently come out, which has kicked a hornet's nest, not just in the dog training world. This is what's very, very weird, very weird about this. Not just in the dog training world, but in terms of people on social media attacking academics, who are simply there to do what they do, to look at the data that they get, to code the data that they get, to come up with the conclusions, the findings that they get, the recommendations that they have. People are attacking those academics. And it's going beyond that, where we're actually getting organizations outside of social media, dog training groups and academia who are also jumping on board, which is what I really want to have a look at in this live. So this piece of research here, that has recently come out, was a little bit of a kick in the guts for some people. Both sides of any sort of like dog training debate, if you like, have got their goods and their bads about it, their pros and their cons. But ultimately, if I can just give you a sort of like a snapshot finding of it, e-collars may be an appropriate tool in the hands of expert trainers for training behaviours that have important welfare impacts, such as running after cars or other animals, and None of the dogs in any group showed any signs of stress or distress, apart from yelps on the initial application of the stimulation of the collar, depending on what level that collar was. Two groups of dogs trained with food reward did not refrain from chasing the lure across 5 training sessions and failed all 4 test sessions. Right, I've put video stuff out before with Truman and other dogs where food has been, put out free for the taking for dogs that are chasing, and the dogs continue to chase. So that's not a massive surprise, but it's scientifically been observed, recorded and documented. And also the dogs, the e-collar group stopped chasing a lure within 2 sessions of 10 minutes of lure running per session, and the dogs also refrained from chasing the lure in 3 out of 4 test sessions. Okay, so ultimately what you're finding is the dogs that were trained with a remote collar stopped chasing. Most of them stopped chasing, some of them didn't, most of them stopped chasing, and the dogs that were trained with the reward didn't stop chasing and failed in the tests. And then you've got all your sort of like arguments going on about it with who was doing the training and how the training was conducted, and we wouldn't do it like this and we wouldn't do it like that. But that isn't the purpose of this live, right? I'm not looking at dissecting that research. I'll leave that to other people, or I'll do that at a later date, or I'll do it with other people at a later date. But all I want to say is that that piece of research has come out, okay? And it's been published. And it's kicked up, for want of a better phrase, a shitstorm in the dog training, behaviour modification, animal welfare, dog animal welfare sort of like communities. Now, the thing that I want to talk about here is that the trainer, one of the trainers, or a couple of trainers that were involved in that research was named. It was Ivan Balabanov, okay? And one of Ivan's trainers were involved in the training, in the supply of the data for the researchers to be able to code and analyze and reach their conclusions, etc. But those two, Ivan and another trainer, were involved in that process. Now, for people who don't know anything about Ivan, Ivan is a very, very accomplished, competitive member of dog sports, okay, winning world titles, multiple world titles, national titles, been training dogs for over 30 years, worked 7 years with, I believe, the SPCA, a charity in the States, has currently got 2 dogs that were deemed for, fit for euthanasia in his own home, that he, has basically prevented them from meeting that end. Ivan is a guy who knows what he's doing. Whatever you think about anybody, whatever you think about me, whatever you think about anybody else, whatever personal things aside, that's the guy's credentials. Extremely accomplished, extremely capable, extremely knowledgeable trainer in the field that he works within, okay? So Ivan was involved in that research, okay, providing the data for that research. And I'm not going to get drawn into the whole bun fight stuff that's going on social media in respect of that. What I want to talk about is the fact that Ivan, let me just tell you this, Ivan has never ever received any kind of prosecution, of investigation, of suspicion for causing harm to animals ever. Okay, there is absolutely, the guy is as squeaky clean as they come when it comes to the humane treatment of animals within the eyes of the law. He's never done anything wrong. Ivan is due to come to the UK to give a seminar at the beginning of next year. It's a popular seminar. Lots of people want to hear what Ivan has to say. Lots of people want to meet Ivan. Lots of people want to learn from Ivan. It isn't the first time that Ivan's been over. Ivan came over to the UK probably around 15 to 18 years ago. I remember at the time, a couple of police, or certainly one, I think there were 2 police dog instructor friends of mine who went to Ivan's seminar and came away from Ivan's seminar largely with a better grasp of the concept of play, a better grasp, not coming away with the concept of training tools, not coming away with the concepts of aversion, using aversion, negative consequences for dogs or anything like that, but coming away with a better understanding of how to incorporate play, specifically what Ivan then would have called the game, specifically tug with dogs, getting dogs, understanding how better to engage dogs to tug and to release on a tug by using tug, the Premack principle, if you like, as a means of getting that re-engagement, getting that release, getting that re-engagement. It was the whole communication without conflict, Ivan's thing that he pushed when he was over. And at the time, when I was working with police dogs at the time, I will say that that made a big impact on our police force, our police dog section, training with dogs when it came to getting dogs to release bites and to engage with bites. Taking that and putting that in with the way that we were training at the time made a big impact, a positive impact. It was non-confrontational. It was not aversive based. It was based entirely upon the cessation and the re-engagement, the reenactment of play with a dog. Okay, so that was Ivan. That was what Ivan came over with. And hearing Ivan recently on a podcast as well, there was a lot of talk about play and how important he thinks play is. And I know from going to a seminar with Larry not too long ago, Larry Crone, where, he was also talking about Ivan, and there was a lot of play in Larry's seminar as well. It's quite refreshing to see a guy who is so known for training tools, specifically electronic collars, who put so much emphasis into play and building and developing relationship and positive motivations with dogs. Okay, so that's a little bit about Ivan, and he's, as I say, he's coming at, he is brilliant at play theories with dogs. So, and I'm worried about his seminar being boycotted, is a comment that's just come up there. So Ivan has this seminar planned. Ivan was one of the two trainers that were involved in this recent piece of research that came out that bucked the trend, that kicked the narrative in the teeth, the common narrative that a lot of I'm going to say opinionated, I'm going to say ideologically driven dog trainers, dog training organizations, dog owners, individuals with no understanding of anything but beliefs and opinions. It kicked the trend. It bucked the trend because this research has showed success in an area that you didn't want to see success and failure in an area that they didn't want to see failure. Now, I'm not going to jump on it. I've been on both sides of this fence. I've been a positive reinforcement only trainer. There's no such thing, but I would have liked to have thought myself as one. I'd have also liked to thought myself as force-free, as reward-based. There's no such thing as either of those two things either. But hey-ho, they're just labels, and I like them. And I understand why people would like to, go down that route. I'm not saying that in any patronising way, in any condescending way, in any negative way whatsoever. I've been there. I've been that person. I enjoyed being that person. So there's no sort of, like dig coming in there. But what I'm saying is that what I believed then, this research that has come out would have hurt. It would have hurt me on an emotional level. It would have hurt me on a cognitive dissonance level. It would have hurt me on a confirmation bias level. I wouldn't have liked it because it didn't confirm what I wanted to believe and what I genuinely did believe. So I too would have looked at any angle that I possibly could to have attacked this research. Fine. If you want to sort of like criticize research, that's no problem. Research isn't a living thing. It's just some findings. If you want to dispute it, if you want to argue about the way that it was obtained or the findings that were, discovered, that's absolutely fine. The problem comes when you switch from focusing on the actual research, focusing on the findings, and focusing on debating those findings, or why I consider them to be right, why I consider them to be wrong, how they could have been better, however it goes, to the person, to actually attacking people. That becomes problematic. These ad hominem attacks towards either trainers or towards researchers that were involved, that's problematic. If you're calling on researchers to, back up, to evidence what they're saying or whatever, fine. If you see questions in research and you're asking the researchers to, answer those questions, fine. But when you're talking about attacks on people, that's something completely different. So that brings me to what I want to talk about. Long way around it, wasn't it? Excuse me a second. Let me just have a sip of this. Exactly, Peter. So Peter, I know Peter is a brilliant researcher out in Botswana, I think, who's studying predator conservation there with big cats and, working to protect those animals from the, protect those animals from potential threat by looking at alternative means of controlling them through synthesizing scats, big cat scats and things like that. I mean, if you want to know anything about that, speak to Dr. Peter Apps. He knows his stuff. He's a very, very capable applied scientist who's working in the field of predator conservation. But yeah, so what has happened is Ivan is coming over to the UK, right? Fine. A guy is coming over to the UK, is a guy with no criminal record in relation to animals, no investigations in relation to animals, never harmed animals, has got no outstanding, prosecutions awaiting or anything like that, investigations awaiting, done nothing. Just a guy who knows his stuff. He's worked with dogs for a long, long time, trained dogs for a long, long time, trained people about training dogs for a long, long time, been on social media for a very long time, put his work out there for a very long time, and has never received anything. Certainly from the UK. Has never received any kind of criticism, any kind of negative attacks on him. Certainly not from national organisations within the UK. Okay, and that includes the time that Ivan came over before. He never received any sort of contact prior to coming over, any warnings, anything like this, any, watch yourself, be careful what you do when you're over here, we're watching you, nothing whatsoever. And there are probably thousands of other dog trainers that have come to the UK and elsewhere around, around the world, training and talking and educating people, for the betterment of dogs and to increase their understanding of working with dogs. So here we have Ivan who's coming over now. Just after this research has come out. And lo and behold, what Ivan gets slapped with before he even gets here is a letter from the RSPCA in England. Okay, so let me just tell you, this is a guy who's done nothing. He's got absolutely no convictions. He's not coming over saying, I'm coming over here to do X, Y, Z with dogs. What he's doing, let me just shrink this down, guys. This has just shot up on me a second. There we go. So he's not saying, I'm coming over to the UK to do X, Y, Z. He's not set out an agenda. There is absolutely nothing unlawful, nothing suspicious, nothing underhand about what Ivan plans to do when Ivan comes to the UK. Ivan is coming to the UK to speak to a group of paying individuals who want to learn from Ivan, this accomplished dog trainer, this former SPC, I think it's SPCA, SSPCA. I'm not familiar with the American, rescue organisations, but worked with them for years, who want to learn from this guy who promotes so much about training without conflict, about the game, about, achieving goals through motivational purposes. They want to learn from this guy, but because it would seem, now I can't say for a certainty, right? So I'm not going to say for a certainty, but what I'm going to say is I'm going to say to the RSPCA as well, let me tell you, this is how this is coming across. This is coming across as very, very political. It is also coming across as that you have been shouted at, demanded. People have said to you, you cannot let this guy speak. You cannot let this guy come to the UK to speak. Speak. That's what we're talking about. Speak. You cannot do it. And what have you done? You've sent him an email saying, let us just let you know about the laws in the UK. Let us let you know about the Animal Welfare Act in the UK. Let us let you know about DEFRA's Code of Guidance for when it comes to working with animals in the UK. Let us remind you what you cannot do. Let us let you know about our concerns. We want to meet with you. We want to speak with you because of our concerns about the fact that a man is coming to speak to people about dog training with that back catalogue, who has just basically been selected by a very, very qualified academic, a very seasoned, a very established academic to work on that academic's paper, that has passed ethical permissions to do what was done throughout that training. that has got absolutely no history of any kind of illegal activity with animals, yet the RSPCA consider it necessary to send him a pre-warning letter. Now, whether the RSPCA say it wasn't a warning letter, it's just advising him of the laws around animal welfare in England and how the government, how courts look favourably upon reward-based training, because that's the code of practice that DEFRA put out, and that's what courts can take into consideration when they're deciding on punishments, when they're deciding on penalties for wrongdoing where animals are concerned. Whether you mean it or not, and I'm saying this from a third person, okay, from an outside party, I consider that kind of letter to be intimidating, coming from an organisation as large as the RSPCA. Why have you not sent those letters to everybody else who has ever come and talked about dog training in the UK? With everything that is going on in the UK, with all the potential for harm to dogs, with all the not just dogs, animals in general, with every single animal welfare issue that is going on in the UK, why do we deem it necessary to send a warning letter? Or let's say that you didn't mean it as a warning letter, but I will say that having seen it, I certainly would consider it to be a warning letter, a come and speak to us, you better be aware of the law surrounding what you're doing when you come over here, and we don't really agree with aversive tools, and the UK government was looking to ban electronic training collars in January, and it was only because we ran out of parliamentary time by July that we didn't actually proceed. But never mind, we still don't like that sort of thing here. It's very, very coercive in practice. That is the way it comes across. I'm not saying that's the way it's intended. I'm saying that's the way it comes across to a third party, and I also believe that that's the way it comes across to Ivan. Now, let me also tell you, I've spoken with Ivan. Okay, I've exchanged dialogue with Ivan. Now, so there's your first thing. Okay, is that we've sent a letter to Mr Balabanov saying about the Animal Welfare Act and our concerns. What we then get today is a press release from Dr. Sam Gaines at the RSPCA. I'm going to read it to you. This press release has been published by Birmingham World UK because Mr Balabanov's Ivan's seminar is taking place in the Midlands and it's an undisclosed location. Don't you consider that? Don't you consider that kind of censorship, that kind of fear of censorship to be alarming? That I can't even disclose where I'm going to speak. And I'm going to speak from personal experience, because I once put out an opportunity to teach people about dogs, to teach people, give people a greater understanding about dogs. This wasn't a tool-based speech. It wasn't a tool-based opportunity or presentation, if you like, seminar, if you like. It wasn't about methodology. It was about understanding more about dogs. And I chose this location. I worked with somebody else who gave me a location in the UK, and it formed part of a church. It was a church hall. And that church hall was also used by members of an alternative training group. It was the Kennel Club. I don't mind saying it was the Kennel Club. Excuse me while I just have a wet my whistle. Kennel Club used this same hall to train their weekly classes that I was going to speak in, that I was going to educate people in. And the vicar, who actually was in charge, so you're talking about a church here, right? The vicar who was in charge of this hall where I was going to speak sent me an email saying I was no longer welcome. Why? Because the classes that were using that hall had threatened the vicar that they would pull their classes, they would pull their funding if he allowed me to speak. Just to speak, to attend that venue. So I absolutely understand. You can understand perhaps where my concerns are when I'm seeing similar sort of things going on here. But here, we're not just getting emails to the local venue, because Ivan hasn't let the venue be known. Very wisely, I don't blame him for the way things are, because this transcends dog training. This transcends tools. This is all about politics. It's all about censorship. It's all about cancel culture. It's all about absolutely annihilating any kind of vocal opposition through fear of the fact that they may show something. They may show something or say something that potentially threatens our position, our ideological position. That's a very, very dangerous path to go down. Not just for dog training, but for anything. When you start censoring people because of what they might say or what they believe, and because it is counter to what you believe, they're not doing anything, they're not harming anything, they haven't set out any agenda, they have never done anything in the past, they are a current member of a research project from a highly respected academic, and you're looking to put the clamps on these people, on this person, to say you can't speak. We don't really want you here, but we're not actually saying that. So let me just make that clear. That isn't what's being said, but it is how it is being interpreted from the other end. So the RSPCA put out a press release, Birmingham World. Let me just read this to you. I'll show you that, okay? Concerns raised as US dog trainers sold out Birmingham workshop faces RSPCA backlash over shock collar use. Absolute. I've confirmed this with Ivan. I've spoken with Ivan and I've confirmed this. And I've said, can you confirm that there is nowhere in what you've put out, in the information that you've put out about your forthcoming seminar, where you have talked about shock collar use? Ivan said he hasn't said anything about anything that is being put out within that seminar. Yet there is RSPCA backlash over shock collar use. Where does that come from? Where does that come from, and how are you able to get that into the press? Your concerns, your unfounded, unwarranted, unevidenced concerns of shock collar use by Mr Balabanov when he comes to the UK. It's embarrassing. As a member of the UK, as a citizen of the UK, it is embarrassing to read this. A dog trainer has announced a workshop in Birmingham in January, prompting concerns for the RSPCA about animal welfare. Why? Why? The guy's just been involved in a research project that has passed ethical approvals. The guy has performed all over the world on international stages. He has shown what he does before the public. YouTube galore, put everywhere. Why do you now have so many concerns about animal welfare that you need to put out a press release in relation to it, in relation to this person coming to speak? I hope people seeing this can actually see what I'm saying here. You know, this is a far bigger picture than an actual training tool or a training style. Do you know what I mean? This is all about censorship, and it's reaching out and it's bringing in organisations that have got royal patronage behind them to try and censor, to try and, whether you mean it or not. Like I'm saying, a lot of things aren't necessarily about the way that you intend them, but they're about how the recipient receives them and interprets them. And this is being received and interpreted as a very coercive practice, as a use of an acronym, as a use of a position of authority to be able to shut down somebody who simply wants to come and educate. The venue is yet to be announced, though social media posts state that the workshop is sold out. So it's clearly not, we've either got a great deal of animal abusers that all want to go and put animal welfare at risk, or we have people who want to go and learn, who want to be educated from somebody with a great deal of experience and a great deal of knowledge who is going to provide that education for them. Shock collars are currently legal in the UK, although the government did announce a ban on the use of collars on dogs and cats in England, but the legislation has yet to be passed. The RSPCA said that it's written to Mr Balabanov, yes they have, about this type of training method and has offered to meet him, but is yet to receive a response. While still legal to use in England, shock collars on dogs and cats have already been made illegal in neighbouring Wales. Have your say and leave a comment below. Electric shock collars. What are shock collars? Electric shock collars are used by some to train dogs by applying a shock to the dog's neck. Listen to shock, 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 shock. There's no research. When you look at in the UK, when you look at DEFRA's funded research, the Lincoln research, and you also look at further research that was conducted on electronic collars, the use of shock was expressly avoided. It was purposely avoided because the emotive connotations and the fact that it presented an inaccurate representation of the tool in comparison to what was actually experienced as a result of it. But I'll let you have it anyway. To reduce unwanted behaviour, the shock needs to be strong enough for a dog. So we're already looking at one end of the stick. It's purely about reducing unwanted behaviour. There's absolutely no wider lens about how electronic collars are used. It's all about stopping unwanted behaviour. That's all we can see. Punishment. Nothing to do with reinforcement whatsoever. Nothing to do with negative reinforcement whatsoever. It just needs to be strong enough for a dog to feel and to be of sufficient magnitude for them to be fearful of feeling that shock again. What a load of crap you have written here, RSPCA. I am still going to try and bring myself back and not be as emotive, but you are being emotive deliberately because I know how you operate. I've spoken with you. We've met. I know your tactics, and I know that the use of emotive language to create visceral responses, because it's very difficult to counter an emotional response with logic once that emotional response has been fired up. I want to defend it. It feels bad. I don't want to hear what you've got to say. I don't want to hear the truth. I feel good about the fact that you're bad. This is deliberate. But the RSPCA said research had shown this type of training causes pain, and the use of such devices can actually risk causing further problems. Link it then. Link it. If it only causes pain, you haven't said can, you haven't said might, you haven't said may. This type of training causes pain, and the use of such devices can actually risk causing further problems. Dr. Samantha Gaines, dog welfare expert at the RSPCA, said shock collars are unnecessary and cruel. That's entirely up to you, Dr. Gaines, that's your opinion. It concerns us that there are workshops taking place in the UK which promote training techniques that can cause pain and distress and may actually worsen behaviour problems. Dr. Gaines, if it concerns you that there are workshops taking place which promote training techniques that can cause pain and distress, where is your evidence for that when it comes to Mr. Ivan Balabanov? Where is your evidence that the presentation that Ivan Balabanov is giving is about promoting training techniques that can cause pain and distress and may actually worsen behavioural problems? Why is that causing you so much concern that you need to put out a press release? You clearly have a body of evidence to show that that is exactly what the guy is going to do. That is exactly what the guy does. Where is it? Because I've asked for it. And when I asked Ivan, Ivan said he hasn't put anything out. Because these workshops, his seminars intend to focus on more positive aspects, motivational aspects, as has been the case in the past. So what are these concerns based upon? We have concerns about the equipment Mr. Balabanov uses, including shock and prong collars, and right, this is the bit. This is the bit. We have concerns about the equipment Mr. Balabanov uses, including shock and prong collars. And we're urging people to take a stand with us on this. What does that mean exactly? If that isn't inciting some kind of negative response in the British public because you've put this in the press, why are you trying to incite the British public to take a stand with you against Mr. Balabanov because of your concerns about the equipment that he uses? Do you see how wrong that is? Do you see how wrong that? Do you see how much that lacks an evidence base? I don't like you. I think you will use these. You have used these in the past. I think you will use these in the near future. Therefore, I must stop you from speaking in the near future, and I must encourage the British public to take a stand with us against this. What sort of behaviour is that? From a national charity? What on earth is going on here? This is literally whipping people up. Take a stand with us. All this shock, cause pain and distress, concerns, shock and prong collars. Take a stand with us on this. Take a stand with us on what exactly? The use of these I think this is the same thing. Oh, here we go. The use of these collars requires the dog to associate being shocked with their unwanted behaviour. Creating fear in this way risks numerous negative consequences for the dog and owner. I'm going to try and stop getting drawn in. Dogs may associate the shock with other things in their environment, such as other dogs or people, and learn to avoid or be aggressive towards these. Evidence that dogs may associate the shock, will certainly, will always, have been shown to, will categorically, may. That's not, what sort of a word is that? Anything may. I may get hit by a truck when I cross the road. I may get hit by a cyclist when I cross the road. Where do I draw the line on things that are wrong based on what may happen as a result of them? Dr. Gaines added, it is neither necessary nor acceptable to use these collars. We promote and recommend reward-based training techniques that dogs like or enjoy and have been shown to be very effective in achieving long-term change in behaviour without compromising dog welfare. There's no such thing as reward-based dog training. Let me just say that for a start. There's no such thing. There is absolutely no definition of it. If you put a definition of reward-based dog training down, which is that I base my training on reward, everybody does it. Everybody who trains an animal does that. So it's not a badge of honour. It's blanket. It's basics. It's foundation. Everybody wants to work with a dog with motivation. Everybody wants to get a dog to respond through motivational incentives. But the problem is, in many instances, you cannot work with all dogs simply through motivational incentives. But again, I'm not going to go down that road. It's neither necessary nor acceptable to use these collars. Evidence that. Because the recent research that has come out has shown that there is a great place for electronic collars. Under the right circumstances, under the right guidance, there is a great place, i.e. stopping dogs from chasing other animals, which in this instance was a lure because other animals weren't put at risk. But the electronic collars were far more successful in causing dogs not to want to chase that animal than reward-based training, which failed. It failed in all tests. That's not me saying that. That's what the research has found. Yet here we're saying there's a wealth of evidence from around the world which supports the effectiveness of positive training methods. Clearly not. There's also a lot of evidence that shows the ineffectiveness of positive training methods. This sort of like trying to stamp an absolute scientific consensus in respect of a particular approach to training animals is false. It has to stop. Nothing is conclusively proven, either side of the fence. It depends who you're asking. It depends how things were conducted. It depends what it is that you're training for, who's funding it. There is no scientific consensus. So we need to stop saying all of this sort of thing, whereas there's a wealth of evidence that shows that it supports the effectiveness. Yes, in certain aspects, in certain areas. In other areas, there isn't. There's a strong lacking. In fact, in other areas, there's strong support for the effectiveness of electronic training collars, such as Dale's Kiwi study in New Zealand, such as Wynn's study that's just come out with Ivan Balabanov here, such as Chris Jansen has held. There are multiple studies that show the effectiveness of electronic training collars. So let's not try and write a press release to show that there is only one side of a two-sided coin. It's disingenuous, it's unprofessional, and it's dishonest. Be honest in what we're putting out. Everybody wants to work with dogs that enjoy training and where they've been shown to be happy, and where there's long-term change in behaviour without compromising dog welfare. Absolutely. If I were to jump over to Clive Wynn's research here that Ivan was involved in, so we're saying long-term change in behaviour without compromising dog welfare. None of the dogs in any of the groups showed any signs of stress or distress. Okay? I would say that is something that doesn't have long-term compromise on the dog's welfare. None of the groups showed any signs of stress or distress. Yet it's a completely different piece of research compared to the types of research that we're citing here. We've got to stop this. It's ridiculous. It's unhelpful. In January this year, Oh, let me just bring you this one. There's a wealth of evidence from around the world which supports the effectiveness of positive training methods, which is now widely used by many across the world. Don't dispute it. There is a lot of evidence that positive training methods in many instances are very effective. I wouldn't say that we necessarily needed that, because a lot of common sense from people who train dogs would show that anyway. If I can train something with you with motivational incentives, I'm going to do that. It is effective and it can get me positive results, including not only pet dog trainers, but also the military and assistance dog organisations, which require dogs to be trained to an extremely high standard. I've worked in the policing environment. I worked police dogs for just up to 10 years. And I've seen how police dogs are trained, you know, and I've seen a lot of good stuff that has been trained with police dogs where we use positive incentives, motivational incentives, and I've also seen situations where punishment is required for police dogs. I've seen areas where punishment has been required for police dogs because it's acknowledged that it is required, and I've seen areas where that punishment would have been best served using negative reinforcement and positive punishment through the use of an electronic training collar, which isn't linked directly to the person, but is linked more to the behaviour, more to the context, and also is less invasive than the alternatives. But without, again, I'm going to avoid rabbit holes, but I know that in 2000, just 1999, 2000, three police dog handlers in the UK were convicted following the death of a police dog. And following the death of that police dog, charities pushed on the ACPO, the Association of Chief Police Officers, to get rid of the electronic training collars and the prong collars that the police used up until that point. And in order, or else we won't give you any other dogs. We've got lots of dogs that come through our rescue. We won't give you them unless you get rid of those. And it's a terrible thing that you've done here. And we wouldn't like to, you know, it's not very good, is it? We don't want to make a scene out of this. And so ACPO naturally thought, okay, let's just get rid of those things. Let it go. Let it get out of the way. And then what we get is these charities turning around and saying, look, even the police can train their dogs without electronic training collars. Even they don't need them in their high drive, without actually explaining the coercive process of saying we won't give you any more dogs unless you actually get rid of those. You know, we won't give you any more potential dogs. That doesn't come out. And the fact of the matter is there's been absolutely no research done by these charities to see the consequences of their actions in terms of what replaces the electronic training collar or the prong collar where they may have been used in certain situations, and how is that in terms of efficacy? How good is it? How effective is it? How invasive is it? How does the dog perceive it? Not how I believe it to be, but how does the dog perceive it? There's been no research done in that way, just in the same way that in Wales, where they banned electronic training collars with a jerk of a political knee in 2010, there's been no subsequent research done to see what are the effects on the welfare of dogs as a result of that action. All there was a 5-year review of exactly the same evidence that was reviewed the first time round by the same person who reviewed it the first time round, who came up with the same conclusion that they came up with the first time round, and that's that. On we go, because it's politics. Because it's politics. So with the military, when we're saying, oh, the military don't need them, then why was there going to be an exemption to a ban for the military in the UK? If these high drive dogs, if these dogs which required to be trained to an extremely high standard, why was there going to be an exemption for the military? Why is there an exemption for the military in other countries throughout Europe? Because it is understood that these dogs, these high drive dogs in demanding situations, will not respond entirely to positive incentives. Of course they won't. No animal will, including ourselves, which is why we're seeing this level of coercion being put forward, this level of potential warning being put forward, whether intended or not. It's how it's received that counts, and it is received as being some kind of veiled threat, some kind of keep away, to the point that it's even gone into the press to say this person is coming over. In January this year, the government announced a ban on the use of shock collars in England with a proposal date for a new law in February. However, Parliament didn't get time to debate before July's general election, meaning the new legislation didn't come into effect. The use of shock collars on dogs and cats is already illegal in Wales. The RSPCA has written to the trainer, but the organisation said it has had no response. This is another piece that was posted on social media. by the RSPCA or a member of the RSPCA. As for the venue for Mr Balabanov's workshops, as the venue for Mr Balabanov's workshops is yet to be publicly released, the RSPCA is asking the public to get in touch with them via social media if they have any information. We are keen to discuss, this is Dr. Gaines added, we are keen to discuss our concerns with Mr Balabanov. What concerns? I repeat it again, what concerns? You've put it in a letter, you've put it in a press release, you've put it on social media. And the venue, our concerns with Mr Balabanov and the venues hosting this trainer. This stinks to me of my kennel club experience. We need to speak to the people that are hosting the trainer, to the venues. Why? Why do you need to speak to the venue? What has the venue got to do with this? Though these are yet to be advertised, anyone with information can share this with us via our social media platforms. What are you so concerned about? What are you so concerned about? Again, I'll tell you what I'm concerned about, and I'll tell you the reason for this live, the reason that I popped it up. Thank you for the people that have stayed with it and that are listening to it. The concern is that this goes way beyond Ivan Balabanov. It goes way beyond an electronic collar. It goes way beyond a prong collar. It goes way beyond a slip lead. It goes way beyond a check chain. It goes way beyond a head halter. It goes way beyond somebody saying, no. It goes way beyond that. Way beyond that. This is about censorship. This is about cancel culture. And it's about large national organisations feeling that they have the need, that they have the power to speak out, to try and cancel, to put a sort of like cloak of suspicion around somebody who is incredibly skilled, incredibly experienced and incredibly knowledgeable and incredibly humane, has 2 dogs that were going to be destroyed as his own dogs, and has worked with a charity for 7 years and has put all his work on a global stage for people to tear apart if they want to, yet has never received any kind of criminal prosecution or investigation whatsoever. Yet you want to cancel this man from speaking. That is what I wanted to talk about. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get through those comments, but I would encourage anybody to think about that, because that could be you, it could be me. I'm Ivan Balabanov. In terms of equipment that Ivan uses, I don't use prong collars. There's plenty of people in the UK that do use prong collars. We don't feature in press releases. We don't feature, when I speak on social media, I don't get warning letters coming to me telling me about the Animal Welfare Act. I don't get a press release saying, oh, where's Jamie Penrith going to speak? Where's whoever it happens to be going to speak? Any other trainers that are prepared to do what the animal requires in order to secure the greatest welfare outcome for that animal, for any other animal that that animal might interact with, for the people that that animal might interact with, and to the people that are responsible for the care of that animal. Not being governed by this ideology that causes this grotesque censorship. The moment that you start accepting censorship like this without seeing for what it is the moment that you yourself are sunk, because you will be the next person. You will be the next group. Yours will be the next profession, where these groups come in and try, first of all, nice and quietly, and then they get bigger and they get bigger and they grow in their political strength, where they're able to then start influencing codes of practice and guidance and laws to determine what you do based on what they want, what they think is right. And what you've got to ask yourself is, what are they getting out of it? What are they getting out of it? Because I tell you now, this is not driven by the welfare of animals. This is driven by a far darker force than that. There you go. I'm going to end this live. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm going to have a look at these comments, but I don't want to keep you here, and I don't want to keep potentially getting involved emotively in things. I wanted to keep quiet about a lot of things, but seeing this come up, where you get a national organisation like the RSPCA sending letters to people, warning people of the law in this land, and then saying about their concerns in press, national press releases and putting on social media, inviting people to take a stand and to talk, contact us about the venue so we can speak with the venue. Very, very dangerous ground to tread and very, very dangerous to accept. Have a lovely evening.